Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to masech the Ksubas daf Lamed Vav. We are going to begin on the bottom of Lamed Hamid Alf by the two dots. Tanubana. Arayos, Vishnios Arayos, and we'll discuss the distinctions between those, what exactly that means. Emahen lo kanas, so a person is engaged in being oinus mafata, a woman which there's an Issa Rayos or also a Shnias Rayos, so there's no kanas in that situation. Says Rashi, She'enu b'cheskas b'sua hoyel v'nises. So, okay, we didn't get to that yet. V'lo pitoi, also there's no din of being mafata. Hamamenes ein lo kanas, this is actually what we were going on. A person who is with a woman, Rashi says, Bebala, Kegoyin, Yusayma Katana. You have a woman who was a katana, and her father had died. So, because of that, Rashi explains, Siyasa Ima, that her mother, or could be her older brother, married her off, which is a Kedusha de Rabbanan, and then Umi'ana Bebala. And then she basically refused or walked away from this marriage. It was called miyun. So the Gemara, Rashi just explains what miyun is, which we've had many, many times in Yavamas. So ein lo kanas, this is the Rashi, she'ena b'cheskas b'sula hoyel v'nises. Since she was married, so therefore there's no din kanas, which this obviously teaches us the whole notion of being oinus mafata, and that there's a din of kanas is davka in a situation where she's a besula. But a woman who is married, so therefore she's no longer becheskas besula. And therefore, because of that, there's v'lo kanas, v'lo pitui. So now let's look at question 4. He'ima menes yeshal kanas u'ma'atam. So the Mishnah says beferish that there is no kanas. And the answer is, the reason is, the becheskas ba'ulahi. Okay. Weiter. Islandus ein lo kanas v'lo pitoi. So this is going to be understood at greater length. But an islandus, a woman who does not show any signs of physical maturity, so there's no din of kanas there either. And v'lo b'pitoi. So Rashi explains, first of all, an islandus she'ein lo simoni nairos l'oyum. She doesn't show any signs of physical maturity. V'nio ledes. She cannot give birth. And Rashi quotes the Gemara we saw in the beginning of this Masechta that an islandus is a lashon of ayin ayil zachar. Dechronisa delo yalda. Just like a male ram is not capable of mothering a child, so too her. So why is there no kanas? So Rashi says lafish in kanas el naira, which we're going to discuss this again, but this is actually question 5, which is also found as question TA20, Mas Svaras Mandiar Misha'alnas Einol Kanas. So this again is TA20. So Rashi says the reason for this is Lafish Ein Kanas El Naira. The only din, at least according to our Mishnah, we saw Zamafocus, that the whole notion of there being an issue of, or potential of kanas is only a girl who's between 12 and 12 and a half, which is the status of being called a naira, halacha naira. Zu shlu tavi cyrus oilam kol chav shana tibecheskas katana yibsham be'elach boigeras. So this is interesting. She actually skips a stage. She is not considered ever as a naira, as we saw. An islandess, once she's 20 years old and she's never produced any signs, up until then she's a katana. Then we give her the halachic status as a bogeris. So it's not shy for her to be a naira because she was never, she's not shy to get kanas, because kanas is only for a naira. Again, it's a machlokus if that's the case, but at least that's according to that mandaimer. Now the Gemara continues. V'haitzis mishum shemra einwa lo kanas lo pitoi. In the event that, and Rashi says, Kasakadaitach shlo matzala bala besulim. So Rashi quotes later on, it's a baskilhi, if a man says, I know that she was in fact not a basula, so therefore that was the being Moitzi Shemra. So, and then the question is he telling the truth, which is all the psukim over there. So, in lo kanas lo pitoi. So, the chiddush, the question really is that, what do you mean that there's no kanas? She should be sentenced to death for having committed this crime. So, the Gemara is going to talk about that. So, now the Gemara dissects everything we've learned. So, my arayis umay shnias arayis. So, ilay ma arayis, as we continue to lamed vav and aleph. When we say arayis, it's arayis mamish. It's referring to mamish, the arayis, as one could look in Parshas Acharei Mos, and all of them are iser krisus. Shnius is medivri seifrim, which is how we typically understand this. These are relationships which are a little bit more removed, but nonetheless rabbinically we say they're aser. Says Rashi, "Gazu chachamim al shnius lohen locharchek min haver kagoin aim imoi." Your mother's mother. So arayis is one's mother, and aim imo is also aser al divri seifrim, and maybe that's what it's talking about. So kivan dimidaraisa chaziale. The question is, if the whole notion of shnius arayis midaraisa, they're technically fit to you, am I inlan kanas? It's hard to understand that there's no din kanas. So you should actually be mechuyev, because the pasuk which says lo seil isha midaraisa, you should be able to marry her. El arayos is chayvi misus based. But when we have any relationship in which there's a death penalty, and then shnius is chayvi krisus. So when it comes to chayvi krisus, the din is that there is no kanas. Avol chayvi lavin yeshon kanas, which therefore you can make the diuk that if the relationship is not something which is kares, but it's a level of a chayvi lav, so there is kanas. So mani, who's that like? Shimon hatimoinihi. So we like the shita of Shimon hatimoini. So who's that? Rashi says, Bereish Pirkin Yarmer Isha Sheish Ba Havaya. He says it's all totally on a woman who is shaykh to marry. So according to this opinion, that Kedushin is Tyson B'chayvi Lavin, so therefore it's someone that you technically are allowed to marry. And therefore B'chayvi Lavin there would be Kanas. That would be Shimon hatimoini. So Ikadi Amri Arayis Chavi Misos based in and V'Chavi Krisos, and Shnius is Chavi Lavin, which Chavi Lavin also there's Kanas, which obviously is not like Shimon HaTimaini. So Mani Rav Shimon ben Manasehi. Who's that? He actually says, quoting Rashi, Derma Isha Haroi L'Kaima, someone that you're actually allowed to marry, which extends or excludes Chavi Lavin, because that's not someone you're supposed to marry. Okay, fine. B'diavad Kedushin is typhus, but the Metzias is that that's not someone that you're supposed to be married to. So therefore, that's how we can interpret Arayas and Shnias Arayas. And then we continue to dissect this brisa regarding Mian. So Hamamenes ein lo kanas lo pitoi, which is mashma. Hakatana ba'alma. Let's say she's not married. So we said the problem is because she was already married. So therefore, she's not a cheskas besula, which is mashma that let's say you just have stama katana who was never married, isla. So there is a din kanas. So mani rabbanan the amri katana yeshla kanas. According to the sheet of the rabbanan, kanas is not just for a naira, but it's even for a katana. The problem is name a seifa. Ayilness ein lo kanas lo pitoi. Also rameir. The amri katana ein lo kanas. V'ha mikatnusa yotzel beger, which is basically what we said before, that according to this shita, which is really an this is the continuation of question 5, is the fact that she's an islandess, so she never was a naira. So that's the reason. Oh, so she went from katana to a bulgaris. So what do you mean? But according to the Rabbanon, if in fact we're posting, we're saying that this is like the sheet of the Rabbanon hold there is kanas for a katana. So how would he understand, and why would an islandess not be able, there'd be no kanas? She had the status of a katana, and according to them, so it must be the reason why there's no din kanas by an islandess is because we hold like Rameir. so it's hard to understand. Reish Rabban B'Seif Rameir, V'chitei Makul Rameir. Maybe everything is like Rameir. So the islandist part makes sense. Why, in fact, the din is there's no kanas, because he holds kanas is only for the time of a naira, and an islandist does not have is never a naira. But how do we understand the case of miyun? The diak l'chayra is only someone who had miyun because she was once married. There's no kanas. Mashma katana, there is kanas. Umamenes several Rabbi Yehuda, and when it comes to the din of mamenes, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rashi, Diarmin naira mamenes, that he actually is not talking about miyun at the time of being a katana, because a stam katana there is no kanas, but it's talking about where she could actually continue to do miyun even when she's a naira. V'hachi tiduk mina naira mamenes eno kanas, ha naira ba'alma yesha kanas. So the diak is not that a regular katana is again kanas. No, a regular naira who was never married. You could do miyun at the time of as a naira, but there won't be kanas for you. However, if let's say she was never married and just stam a regular naira, so there's kanas. Umi savrla, is it possible to say that Rameir holds in this instance like Rabbi Yehuda Vosanya? On Masai habas mamenes. Until what stage can a girl do miyun? So he says up until really the status of being a naira and not a naira. And the problem is Rabbi Yehuda himself and Rameir argue about this very fact. So you can't say Rameir agrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad she'yir b'shachar al-alavan. So it's true. Rabbi Yehuda does have this additional time that it continues even while she's a naira, she could still do miyun. But the problem is, there's no way we could possibly say Rameir holds like Rabbi Yehuda, because they argue with each other. El Rabbi Yehudahi. Rather, we're going to see that this whole case is like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda says that, again, the Reisha is very good, because he says that a naira could do miyun. Uba katana several Rameir. And Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to the din of a katana, he holds like Rameir that she could do miyun. That several Rameir that there is no din kanas, rather. And therefore, because of that, that's how we understand the case of idleness. The Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rameir that there's only a din kanas by a naira, and an idleness is no din naira. So therefore, no din kanas, because she was never a naira. So therefore, we can establish everything like Rabbi Yehuda, and regarding the din of no kanas for a katana, is Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rameir. So again, now does Rabbi Yehuda necessarily agree to this? Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Zud Rameir. Vim Isa Zud Rameir Rabbi Yehuda beboile. It should also include Rabbi Yehuda in that grouping. So Haitana several Karameir Bechadu Pagla Bechada. So that Tana felt that they agree in one area. Says Rashi, the katana ein lo kanas. That a katana there's no din kanas. Mishum hachi ein kanas b'ayilnus. However, upagla b'chada, says Rashi, b'mamenes, when it comes to din of miyan, v'aymer ad she'yir b'hashachar, v'chitana ha'mamenes ein lo kanas, ha'haruya l'man yesh lo kanas b'nara kaimer. So that's what he's saying. He agrees with him regarding one aspect, namely that there's only a din kanas for a naira. However, he disagrees with Rameir, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that even a naira could do miyun. Rav and Omer, my mamenes haruya l'moyin. A woman who is fit to do miyun, says Rashi, kol katana kaimer, v'kul Rameir hi. Felisni katana, kasha. So why doesn't it just say the word katana? So kasha, that seems to be a better language. But again, it's another possible way of answering the question. Now, as we've already established, an island is ein lo kanas, v'lo pita, or minhi. If you have a woman who is a deaf mute, the shaita, or a woman who is a shaita, and the islandess, and here's the key element, yeshlin kanas. It says beferish that an islandess there is kanas. Yeshlin tainus besulim, and there's also an element of tainus besulim in order for her to lose her ksuba. Zvaham mai rumya haramer. Harabanan. The only way you can mamish explain this, the only shaykh, is to say this is based on the machlokas Rameir, Rabbi and the Rabbanan. Rameir holds that an ayiloness can never have kinas because she's never a naira. The Rabbanan hold even a katana there's a din kinas, and therefore an ayiloness could have kinas. So maybe this is according to the opinion of Rabbanan. So the ka'arila my ka'arila. So then 1 second, that's how we're going to answer it. So then, what was a havamina? I mean, it seems like pretty obvious. We already knew that they had this argument. Mishum de islay lamirma, because you could have asked a difficulty lamirma achriti olay. It says hachareshes vashaita. Focusing now on the chareshes and the shaita, the haboy geras, and a girl who's over 12 and a half, umukas eitz, or a woman who was hit. Ein lehen tainus b'sulim. Here it says they do not have tainus b'sulim. Now we just mentioned above that a chareshes and a shaita, they do have tainus b'sulim. So that's obviously a question. And then we just bring this down, hasuma, regarding someone who is blind, a girl who's blind, but ayiloness. Again, we have a question about the ayiloness. Yeshlan tainus b'sulim. Now, again, it said above that when it comes to an ayiloness, yeshlan tainus b'sulim. Okay. Sumchas aymer mishum rameir summa ein lo tainus b'sulim. So there's actually a machlokas when it comes to a summa, which we'll understand a little bit better what the din is. But nonetheless, we have a question because we see beferish over here. It says a chareshes and a shaita. There's no ein lohen tainus b'sulim. But we mentioned above that a chareshes and a shaita unless the yeshlan kanas v'yeshlan tainus b'sulim. So it's a stira. So Rav Sheshes lo kasha. Ha Rabbi Gamliel, ha Rabbi Yeshua. Who's Rabbi Gamliel? Says Rashi, reminding us all the way back at the beginning of our first parak on Daf Yud Beis. He omeres, if she says Mishir Stani Nasti, she says that I actually was violated after we already were engaged. Nemenes. In that case, she actually is believed. Hachanami ein lo tainus b'sulim la'asidik subasa. So here also, there's no tainus b'sulim in that she could potentially lose her ksuba. Yamrinan I havi pikachas, if she was wise, litayin havi taina mishir stani nenasti umehimni. Harbi Yeshua de armeloma pianochayin hacha yesh lo tainus b'sulim. So the machlokas, whether there's tainus b'sulim, is whether or not we hold like Rabbi Gamliel or like Rabbi Yeshua. So again, according to the shita of Rabbi Gamliel, since we believe her, the man does not have tainus b'sulim. But Rabbi Yeshua, we say lo b'piano chayin, the man does have tainus b'sulim. So that's how we can answer it. One's Rabbi Gamliel, one's Yeshua. When do we say it's like Rabbi Gamliel? Heicha de kataina ihi, heicha de lo kataina ihi mishamas lei. This is because she actually had a claim. She actually said something. So fine, we'll believe her because she actually came up with this claim. Over in here, this case of the Chareshes and the Shota, they're not saying anything. So why would we make this exception for them? Remember, it's just in. We still do. Kivan diyam Rabbi Gamliel mihimna. Since in that case, if she would actually have said Mishirstani and Nasti, that she would be believed. So therefore, because of this, we literally are going to open up the mouth of the mute. Chareshes is mamish, like it was also an elam. She can't talk. So therefore, we will frame and create this claim on her behalf. Now, we also mentioned over here that once a girl is 12 and a half, there's no longer tainus b'sulim. A man can no longer say that she's not a b'sul. Now, why is it that it says we give her one night? It must be, says Rashi, Alma Isla Dam Basulim. Obviously, there is Dam Basulim. Mitzvah. And we should only go and extend to Bios Mitzvah. In other words, as Rashi says, a person could be boil many bilois on that one night. And we can say that all the damim was dam basulim. What do you mean? How could you say it's dam basulim and not dam nida? Well, Chayra, we just said that there's no tainus basulim
when it comes to a bogeres. So why would you think that it could be possibly you could be totally the dam on dam basulim, and at the same time we said there's no tainus basulim. So bogeres nice and low la rishon. As we continue lamed baba mebeis, so the Gemara says ida katayin tainus damim hachinami. If you claim tainus damim, then in that situation you're right. B'hacha b'mayaskinan the katayin tainus pesach basuach, as we talked about in the first parak. So what exactly does this mean? So Rashi says, "Idik aimer bi'alti." If man says, "Yes, I had bia, v'lomatzasi dam," and I didn't find dam, vade tainim al yasehi. That actually is valid, because as we said, the fact that we give that whole night, because we assume that she does have dam basulim. V'hacha de katani ein lo tainus basulim, de katayin v'aimer pesach basuach masasi. So that much we don't do. If a person says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, that we do not listen. We do not listen to. Question TB 22. Him Yeshul Bogeres Tainus Basulim. So the answer is Tainus Damim Yeshua, Tainus Pesach Pasuach Einla. That's TB 22. Okay. All right. Weiter. So is a machlokus, a woman who is blind, whether or not you could have tainus basulim on her. So my time is the sumchus. Why not? So Rav Zeir Ribnei shenechbetes al gabi karka. Could be that she fell on the ground, and because she's blind, she may not have realized that she actually lost her basulim many years back, and therefore that's the reason why she didn't tell her husband. So it's not really her fault. Everyone could fall on the ground. Yeah, but kuhu rois umaras le'ima. Zu enu roya ve'enu mara le'ima. So she may have seen dam, but she's not going to have literally been able to see dam because she's blind. And because she is not able to see the dam, because of that, we also say she probably didn't inform anyone. So it's very possible that she actually did lose her dam basulim, and therefore the man is not able to be tayin tainus basulim. V'hayotzis mishum shemra ein lo kanas lo pitoy. So hoitzis mishum shemra baskilahi, which we asked before. Taisus over here says pshita de la bas kanasi da bu'ula vadahi. She's a bu'ula. So what exactly is this question? It's obvious. Somewhere of Sheish is Hachakam. Mishi Yatza Lehashemra Bialdusa. Let's say there was some type of rumor while she was young that she was engaged in inappropriate behavior. Ein lo kanas lo pitoi. So we say that there is no kanas or pitoi in that situation, just based on these rumors. Amra Papa Shmamina. We can see when it comes to a star, which is bad, Rashi says, Shiatzel of Shem Ziuf. It has a name of, possibly it's forged, so the din is that you can't collect from it. So, Hechidami, what exactly is this case? If we're talking about making this connection, that we're talking about, there's a rumor that this document is a forgery. So the kavasi hachid and nafakolei kala the zanoi, and there's a similar connection is that people are saying that she's mezana. But ha'omer rabba yatzel Hashem mezana ve'ir ein chayshishin law. That's not true because she's even allowed to marry Cohen. We're not concerned about these rumors. If it's just a rumor, unlike a document, which we're strict and maybe we can't collect from it if people are claiming it was forged. But not necessarily when it comes to here. The fact that there's rumors about her youth should not affect her in any way. El ad yasube trey. It must be that two witnesses came. The Amri, they say, Ladidhu tiva sanhi bisura. That for us, they came to us for with Isser. So that's what it's referring to. Rashi's Kigoin Be'edim. V'lo she'amar leha shenivala. They weren't saying that she was boiled. The imkain malamemra. Halal basulhi. Right? We don't know for sure. They didn't say that. El amri udidhu tavatinhu li'isura. Hefkira atzmo lakach. That she was basically mafker herself to potentially do this. And we don't necessarily know if she actually did bia, but it was known that this was something that she was open to. When it comes to a document, the asabe trade, two people come, the amri ledidhu oimruhu zaifali. It was told that this was a forgery. So bishul mahasam shlichei perutzim. I can understand over there are perutzim, says Rashi. Bishul mahasam shlichei perutzim. Ikivan sheish edim shayis machzeres achar znos. That you see that she's already being machzeres, going after znos. Harbe matzala. There's a lot of people that would take her up on that offer. Mishum hachi in lo kanas. That's the reason why there's no kanas. La'acher zman the la b'cheskas besul havoy. Because there's so many people who are prutzim, if people know that she is open to bia, so there's certainly going to be enough people that are going to be receptive to that idea. So that's why that would make sense in that case. El-hach, when it comes to a document, imhu huchsuk ko Yisrael mi huchsuku. Just because one person has a chazaka for searching after false witnesses, that doesn't mean everyone in the world are going to sign this. People won't sign falsely on a star. No. Since he's going after a forgery, where you can actually say that maybe he'll sign it himself, says Rashi. So it's very possible that even if he doesn't find anyone else that's going to sign this, nonetheless, he may very well do it himself. We can just see a couple more lines. Let's see the next Mishnah. Ve'elu shein lahem kinas. So these are Kaf Test talked about the cases where there is kinas. Here's a list of people there's no kinas. Habal giyaris val shvuya val shivcha. Person is tashish with a convert woman who is in captivity or a slave, that sheniftu v'shniskar v'shnishtacharu. She was redeemed or freed or converted. But here it's Yiseros Abano Shal Sham Yom Echad. They're more than 3 years old when this took place. And it says Rashi Kivan Deruis Labia. Once they've reached more than Shal Shanim, they're fit for Bia. Becheskas Hefkerhin. The fact that they were in that state before they converted or redeemed, we say that they're in a Cheska Chazaka being Hefker. And therefore, because of that, we don't assume that they're Basula, that she's a Basula, and therefore there's no Din Kanas. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer Shvuya Sheniftis Harihik B'Kedushasa. Actually, that's not the case. That's not the case when it comes to a Shvuya. A woman who is in captivity and is redeemed, she retains her sanctity, and therefore, l'chayra, what that means is that there is a din kanas. Now, afapi shigadoy, even if she's older. And then, unlike the din of kares, where there is kanas, habal bitay al bas bitay, which all these cases are misas based in. Person has a relation with his daughter or his granddaughter. Al bas benay, his son's daughter. Al bas ishtay, his wife's daughter. Al bas benah, his son's daughter. Al bas bita, his daughter's daughter. Ein lehen knas. Why? And nation schai benafshay shemisasan bidi based in. The whole hamischai benafshay in mishal mamoin. When a person is already going to be chayiv misa, no longer is there a din of having to pay as well. Rashi says, if you hit the woman and you cause her a miscarriage, but she lives, so you have to pay the mevladais. But if you would have killed her, so the din is that you do not have to pay, because once you've done something in which you're going to be chayav misa bidi adam by based in, so no longer is there going to be a requirement to pay. So all these cases, because it's misa b'di adam, so therefore you're not going to need to pay. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Daisa, Amar Davar Echad. That Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Dosa say the same thing. Rabbi Yehuda had Amar. Rabbi Yehuda, we just said in our Mishnah, that he is lenient when it comes to a shvuya, that she retains her kedusha. Rabbi Daisa, who's that? The Sanya. Shvuya oichelos v'truma de Rabbi Daisa. Rabbi Daisa says that a shvuya who was a daughter of a kohen, she can continue to eat truma, and we do not assume that she became a ba'ula and that she became invalidated to eat the truma. So again, it seems like they say the same thing. So Rab Daisa v'chima asala arbi halos. What did this guy do? V'chima ne shemiachla ben dadeha pasla. Just because he may have done some inappropriate thing, we're going to say that she's going to be pasal min a kahuna. That's Rab Daisa. Says Rashi Kolomer, Eino hagamen hefker l'oinsen bebila ela l'sachek imohen. That they were engaged in some type of improper behavior, but we're not going to say that necessarily they had tashmish, and therefore because of that she's not going to be pasal the kahuna. Omer Rabba Dilma loihi. You want to compare Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Daisa? Maybe not. Ad kan loikam Rabbi Yehuda hacha. Maybe the only time Rabbi Yehuda says this din in our Mishnah is el shloi hechayt nisker, because what happened? This man who did an avera in our Mishnah, we go strict and make him pay his kanas, even if, let's say, there is a doubt. But the fact that he had tashmish with her, why should we let him get away with it? We should still cause him to have to pay the kanas. But maybe the truth is, when it comes to this case, he may hold like the Rabbanan, not like Rab Daisa, and therefore you're not allowed to eat the truma, because maybe we're choishes that they had bia. Maybe he's only leaning because it's truma de Rabbanan. However, when it comes to over here, where it's a din deraisa, maybe he holds like the Rabbanan. So Amalei Abai, the Taimei the Rabbi Yehuda hacha is the reason of our Mishnah is shaloye hechayt niskarhu. The only reason is because we're going to allow the shvuya to be fine, because we don't want and we're going to make the man pay the kanas, because why should he gain or not lose out? But Tanya Yehuda Omer shvuya shenishmis, how are he b'kedushasa? It says she's in her sanctity. It doesn't just sound like, yeah, we're just going to make the guy give kanas. So there is a din kanas according to him. We say that she's still kadosh. Afil bas eser shanim, even 10 years, ksubasa masayim. The ksuba is still going to remain 200. How is it possible that you could say this case of shloye chayten nisker? After all, over here we're talking about it's her husband. So what exactly? Okay, this is a din of Mosayim, but that's not a chayten nisker. I can understand the man who potentially had bia with her. We're going to make her have kanas because it was ma'anis, this woman. So that was a terrible sin what he did. But the husband, why are we saying that by him? No hasam nami dilma mamanim v'loy natzvilah, because maybe he'll hold back and not marry her. Says Rashi, I pach tos ksubasa. If we minimize the ksuba, mishavis lo b'cheskes ba'ula, we're going to basically be saying that she was a ba'ula. That what happened when she was in captivity, she actually did have relations with this man, and therefore because of merachila fil Yisrael, then men are going to distance themselves. So interesting. They make the ksuba more money. They make the ksuba for 200, so that a man will think, oh, she's obviously a becheskas besula, she's fine. But some Rabbi Yehuda b'kedushasa kaima. Is it true, like he says in the Mishnah, that the kedusha remains? Wasanya hapaide es hashvui, a person who pays a ransom for a person who is in captivity. Yisena, he can marry her. Me'edba lo yisena. However, if you testified regarding her, then you cannot marry her. Says Rashi, this is actually talking about the one who also paid the ransom. We're not going to believe him to say, oh yeah, she was never violated. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ben kach u'ben kach lo yisena. It doesn't make any difference. In all situations, we're never going to allow this kohen to marry her. So haguf kasha. Amrit, first we said, Hapoides Ashvuya Yisena. It says if you redeem this woman, you pay her ransom, so you can marry her. And then it says, if you testify that she's fine, you cannot marry her. Doesn't make sense. Because you testified, now you can't marry her? If a person redeems a shvuya, and also testifies, he did both, then yisena. Then we're going to believe this guy that he is probably quite certain that she's mutter to him. However, me'ed ba kidi, if that's all he did was testify, but he didn't pay any money, lo yisena, then he cannot. So mikol makom kasher Yehuda. L'chara, this is still problematic to Rabbi Yehuda, who in our Mishnah says, a shvuya harihi b'kedushasa. So Papa Emer Yehuda Oimer Ben Kach Ben Kach Yisena. To be consistent with our Mishnah, what it means is Rabbi Yehuda says that whether or not you paid for the ransom or you didn't, and all you did was testify, you can still marry her. Because we assume, according to Rabbi Yehuda, harihi b'kedushasa. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yeshua Omer L'Olam Kedektani. Rabbi Yehuda L'Devram D'Rabbanan Karma. L'Hu. L'Didi, according to me, Ben Kach Yisena. I hold that the shvuya retains her kedusha, so therefore you can marry in all circumstances. Elodidchu, according to you, ben kach yisena miboile. You should say that it should never work. Rabbanan hapoides the shvuya made by yisena. Interestingly enough, money talks. If a person paid for the ransom, also, then he's allowed to get married to her, because lo shadi inish zuzi b'chdi. A person is not just going to have paid for this for no reason. The fact that he spent all this money to pay for her ransom is as a raya that he must know that he's halachically allowed to marry her. Otherwise, if there was any question, and then all of a sudden he's not allowed to marry her, he would never have spent all that money to have necessarily redeemed her. However, Meidba, Kediv, all he did was testify, but he didn't show any money. Well, Yisena Shem Einam Nasanba. So maybe all he did was you cast your eyes upon her, but not necessarily is it proof that you know definitively that she is fine. And the fact that you don't shell out any of the money for a ransom, that may show that you're a little bit skeptical yourself. Question 6. Omer Rapapa Shmamina Haishtara Ra'ayo Loy Magdinan Bey. When it comes to this document which is forged, so Mehechen Lom Rapapa Din Zeh. It says, from the fact that it says Hayaitzus Mishum Shenra Ein Lo Knas Upitoy. So the fact that there's this rumor, or it's more than a rumor, and there's witnesses to that effect, so that she was not boil, but it was open to that idea because there's so many perutzim. So because of that, he recognized that the din probably also is the same thing when it comes to a star. Question 7. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer Shivuya Sheniftes Harihi B'Kedushasa. Shvuya Chelas B'Truma De Rabbi Daisa. So Mahu HaChiluk. Yeshon Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Daisa Lo Yamar Davar Echad. So again, maybe Rabbi Daisa is lenient only by Truma De Rabbanan, but not by Din Deraisa. Or maybe the only reason why Rabbi Yehuda says that there's a din kanas is in order that the chayta should not be nisker. This man should have to pay the kanas. However, maybe when it comes to truma, we will not allow her to eat truma. Ad kan.